Christine O'Donnell. Her endorsement from Governor Palin made headlines coast to coast.
Speak through Fox News and let the independents who are tuning into you, let them know what it is that she stands for, the principles behind her positions.
It used to be that new candidates were advised to brush up on the issues so they could handle questions from anyone, even tough questions. The idea behind that was that it prepared you also for actually governing. But now the advice to candidates is only to talk to sympathetic reporters.
We need to start now by electing strong leaders who aren't afraid to shake it up. We need strong, principled leaders, public servants who respect our Constitution.
Sometimes you just have to see something for yourself. This year's Senate race in Delaware is one of those somethings.
And as we approach the general election over this next month and a half, it's my goal for you to get to know who I am and why I'm running in this race and why I'm asking you for your vote.
For our coverage on this program, Christine O'Donnell, we've held her to exactly the same standard we'd hold any candidate to, Republican or Democrat. We haven't made fun of her for the witchcraft stuff. We focus on statements she's made that seem to be contradictory. For instance, last week in a debate, she couldn't remember what the 14th and 16th Amendments to the Constitution were. Now, we pointed out in this program that it's easy to get confused for most people, but that most people aren't running for Senate, and most people don't claim to have intensely studied the Constitution at a graduate level, as Christine O'Donnell has repeatedly done.
We need people in Congress who are going to be advocates for our Constitution. If you can help me get elected, I will always vote according to our Constitution. The litmus test by which I cast my vote for every piece of legislation that comes across my desk will be whether or not it is constitutional.
And the Constitution is making a comeback. It's almost as if we're in a season of constitutional repentance.
It is the Constitution by which I will determine how I vote on all legislation coming across my desk. It's the Constitution by which I determine all of my policies. I also have a graduate fellowship in constitutional government from the Claremont Institute. It is the Constitution that I will defend, and it is by the Constitution that I will make all of my decisions. I'm sorry I didn't bring my Constitution with me. Fortunately, senators don't have to memorize the Constitution. Can you remind me of what the other ones are?
14th Amendment defines citizenship, and the 16th Amendment, I think you should know what the 16th Amendment is. Federal income tax.
Okay.
Now, look, I don't have my Constitution exactly memorized. I do know most of the amendments, I think. But what made this interesting to some is that at a previous forum, Christine O'Donnell said this.
What responsibilities or experiences in jobs and past activities do you feel qualify you to be a senator?
Well, for one, I have a graduate fellowship from the Claremont Institute in Constitutional Government, and it is that deep analysis of the Constitution that has helped me to analyze and have an opinion on what's going on today, be able to determine
I think we can end that there.
Hi, Greta, how are you?
I'm very well. All right, Governor, let's go right to Delaware. Can Christine O'Donnell win the United States Senate seat, and is she going to win?
I think she absolutely can win. She needs to stay on message, talking about reining in the federal government and really connecting with her Delaware voters and ignoring what the lamestream media is trying to do to her with all the distractions. Funny, Greta, though, that we are learning more about Christine O'Donnell and her college years and her teenage years and her financial dealings than anybody ever even bothered to ask about Barack Hussein Obama as a candidate and now as our president. We're learning a lot about Christine. She just needs to stay on message, and she's doing great. She's going to win.
What opinions of late that have come from our high court do you most object to?
Oh, gosh. Give me a specific one. I'm sorry.
Actually, I can't, because I need you to tell me which ones you object to.
I'm very sorry right off the top of my head. I know that there are a lot, but I'll put it up on my website.
On the Supreme Court, O'Donnell stumbled.
Oh, gosh.
Much like Sarah Palin had.
Well, let's see.
When asked to name a recent decision she opposes.
It's remarkable enough. It's remarkable enough that Christine O'Donnell seems to be challenging Chris Coons' true assertion that the separation of church and state is laid out in the First Amendment to the Constitution, the part where it says religion and government have to be different things. That is a true statement about what happened in the debate. Reading the transcript of what happened, that describes it. But when you look at the tape, it is clear that there is so much going on here.
It's not right. one of those indispensable principles is the separation of church and state.
Okay, with that, very good dialogue. We appreciate that. Let's move on so we can get to all the panelists and cover a number of areas. Chad Loudgood from the News Journal, please, if you could ask the next question, please.
Where in the Constitution is separation of church and state?
The First Amendment establishes the separation, the fact that the federal government shall not establish any religion, and decisional law by the Supreme Court over many, many decades clarifies and enshrines that there is a separation of church and state that our courts and our laws must respect.
So you're telling me that the separation of church and state, the separation of church and state is part of the First Amendment?
The thing you don't get from just reading that exchange that you do get from the tape is that she thinks she's just won. She thinks she's got one over on Chris Coons there. She's just scored a huge, giant political touchdown. She nailed him. Stick a fork in Chris Coons. He is donezo. This joker thinks the First Amendment has something about religion in it.
Where in the Constitution is separation of church and state?
Turn and smile at the crowd. The crowd is laughing at you.
Just driving into Delaware right now, we're hearing our very first ads.
O'Donnell went years without paying her taxes.
Please join me in supporting Christine and vote for Christine O'Donnell this Tuesday.
Sarah Palin in her robocall, the very beginning of that, she talked about how she can identify with being the victim of personal attacks.
There's been a lot of negative attention towards some Tea Party-backed candidates in some of the statements that they've made. Christine O'Donnell, who's gotten so much attention, except for the fact that she's very far behind in that Senate race. She's had some both misstatements or gaffes in the course of her debate with Chris Coons. Do you think she's actually undermining the Republican brand specifically?
No, I don't. I mean, Chris, folks make mistakes. Lord knows. I'm familiar with, foot and mouth disease. Despite those foibles and those flaws, if you will, of the misspoken word, people understand where their heart is. People understand these folks are going to go out there and fight for them.
Tonight, Tea Party Republican Christine O'Donnell raking in nearly $1 million in donations in just 24 hours and being advised by Sarah Palin to only talk to friendly news outlets. Tonight, why shouldn't those who want to lead us be able to answer tough questions? And as Karl Rove pointed out, there are plenty of questions to ask O'Donnell about how she's been handling campaign money. Tonight, we're keeping them honest.
Hey, politicians who are in office today, some of you need to man up and spend some political capital to support the Tea Party candidates instead of doing this, waiting to see how everything's going to go. You know that the Tea Party candidates are constitutionalists. They've got the common sense. So some of these politicians, the bigwigs within the machine, they're driving me crazy because they're too chicken to come out and support the Tea Party candidates. And yet it's the people who are saying no. That yet the ideas of the Tea Party movement are the American ideals.
Christine O'Donnell just made a mess of herself in a radio interview, so she threatened to crush the station.
Christine O'Donnell is making a mockery of running for public office. She has no real history, no real success in any kind of business. And what that sends to my generation is one day you can just wake up and run for Senate, no matter how lack of experience you have. And it scares me for a lot of reasons. And I just know in my group of friends, it just turns people off because she's seen as a nut job.
The Tea Party American movement is going to grow. On November 3rd, November 2nd isn't the end of this. It's the beginning of this, the reawakening of America and understanding what our foundation is and how America was built and how it became prosperous and generous and safe. And now we need to build upon that.
The Republican Party's chosen candidates got beaten over and over again in Republican primaries this year by candidates the party did not want, and that in some cases the party actively and very vociferously campaigned against. Republican fundraising isn't really much happening through the Republican Party anymore. It's outside groups and campaign committees. One of the most interesting things about politics in 2010 has been watching the RNC, the Republican Party itself, essentially become beside the point. RNC Chairman Michael Steele was so exiled from the political process this year that he's been on a bus touring dozens of congressional districts where there is no chance the Republican can lose. Then wait, why isn't the national chairman? Oh, right. And when he's not doing that, he's being sent literally thousands of miles offshore to places like Guam and Saipan. But Mr. Steele's exile is coming to an end. Mr. Steele is finally coming home. The chairman of the Republican Party is being allowed back into politics, and RNC fundraising is once again a real prospect because the RNC is now going to host fundraisers with Sarah Palin. As first reported by Politico.com, Governor Palin will be at the RNC's Victory 2010 rallies in Anaheim, California next month and in Orlando, Florida. Michael Steele will be there too, but if you look at the invitation that's been posted online by CNN, you can see who's doing the headlining. It's the one whose name is in big blue cursive letters. The Honorable Sarah Palin. Did I say that cursively enough? The Honorable Sarah Palin. For a mere $30,000 a couple, you can get a private meeting with Governor Palin. So any average folks with 30 grand burning a hole in their pocket can meet the woman from Wasilla who went home to Facebook. And that is how Michael Steele and the Republican Party itself will return to politics, through the grace and the fundraising capacity of Sarah Palin. The rent cloth is mended. The split seams are sewn. The lion lays down with the lamb. And instead of some brave new Republican world, it just goes back to being 2008 again. We should have known this is how it would all work out in the end. We should have known, but now we do.
Here, and we're just appreciating the enthusiasm for the common sense messages of Tea Party Americans. So thank you, guys.
Suppose Senator John Doe puts forth a constitutional amendment that would outlaw abortion, even in cases of rape or incest, and he asked you to attend the announcement and support him in that. Would you do it?
I would. Yes, a proposal like that, I would stand by it.
Let's be completely clear about the facts here. There is no place in the world and no time in history where restricting women's reproductive rights makes a people or a nation more free or more equal. These extreme positions on abortion are, without any question, a war on American girls and women, and the fact that there are women who are both complicit and participatory in it is really neither surprising nor unprecedented. It has always been true, and it is incredibly important that we recognize that despite the fact that we can be very proud of these women and as politicians, that the question is, how do women as citizens fare on the other side of them either being elected or not elected?
You know, she does have really low numbers, and people that did support her and walked door to door in the snow. I mean, you think it's cold now? You wait a month. People walked door to door for her to get her elected, and she quit. And there's a lot of things you can do in Alaska, but you can't quit. You can't run dogs and quit. You can't row a boat and quit. You won't survive here if you're a quitter. It's an Alaskan party. So she, even people that are still conservative, still they see her as a quitter.
And do you see leaders like House Minority Leader John Boehner or Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, do you see them embracing this Tea Party's message, or do you think the rift is getting bigger?
No, I see them embracing and kind of evolving themselves into what the people's message is, and this We the People grassroots movement that's able to articulate the solutions to the problems that we're facing in America. They're seeing it, and I think it empowers them to start doing what surely inherently they know is fundamentally right. What I'm really encouraged about and want to encourage Tea Party Americans about is to keep the faith. You know, they've been slandered, they've been lied about by mainstream media, calling them racist, calling them fearmongers and violence inciters, and none of that is true. And yet they've been persevering through all of that adversity and all of that extra challenge. They're standing strong. They're standing very committed to their message. It is the right message for America, and I want to encourage them to just keep the faith, keep it up.
You mentioned slander. Maureen Dowd, columnist of the New York Times, called you the queen bee of the mean girls and named several conservative Republican women, Meg Whitman, Carly Fiorina, Governor Brewer. How do you respond to that?
That's so funny because I don't think I've ever met that gal, Maureen O'Dowd, whatever the heck her name is. I don't think I've ever met her, and I don't think that she's probably hasn't met Jan Brewer or some of these other wonderful, pleasant, gracious, nice, hard-working Mama Grizzlies who are wanting to turn this country around. So Maureen can say whatever she says. I encourage the other Mama Grizzlies and liberty-loving Americans to just keep smiling as we work hard to put America back on the right track. We're going to stay happy, and may we always be happy, and may our enemies know it.